The Manhattan Project was a top-secret government project to build the first atomic weapon. The Manhattan Project was unlike any other massive project in United States history. Due to the sensitivity and tight timeline that was set by the president, the project was compartmentalized, splitting up different efforts as a security measure so that only a few select people at the top knew the entire scoop. There were 3 major sites doing the work. Oak Ridge, Tennessee. The process of refining naturally occurring uranium into the U-235 isotope was perfected using centrifuges. The U-235 isotope was important due to its ability to undergo the fission process with low-energy neutrons. The U-235 was going to be used in a gun-style atomic weapon, where a pile of U-235 would become critical with another piece of U-235 shot into it. This type of bomb was used on Hiroshima. The gun design proved to be impractical for plutonium and was scrapped in favor of another design, which was used on Nagasaki. Hanford, Washington. Chosen to produce plutonium due to the abundance of water, the Columbia River, which produced hydroelectric power for the site. Land, approximately 780 square miles, and sparse population. The plutonium was produced in what are known as breeder reactors as a uranium fission byproduct. It also happens to be highly reactive, even more powerful than U-235. Los Alamos, New Mexico, served as a central location for the project. Led by Dr. Robert Oppenheimer, young scientists such as Edward Teller, Richard Feynman, and Hans Bethe developed the theoretical and experimental tests for the atomic weapon. The first hurdle to overcome was to procure a source for uranium. It had turned out that the Shinkalabwe mine, located in the Congo in Africa, was the sole source for the Manhattan Project. While 1,200 tons of uranium had already been shipped to New York when the project began, another 950 tons were mined and shipped to Oak Ridge. Another hurdle was having enough fissile material present, but not at critical mass so it could be stored and transported. Alluded to earlier, this prominent issue drove Dr. Edward Teller to design a bomb using a hollow core, which was imploded by very precisely timed mini-explosions that compressed the core. The hollow design did not have high enough density, but once it was compressed, critical mass was achieved. Another bomb component then flooded the atomic pile with neutrons to initiate a supercritical fission process, creating the atomic explosion. Everything had to be timed perfectly, pictured as a scientist with the plutonium core with the Fat Man bomb. Interestingly, the gun-style plutonium bomb experiment was called Thin Man, but it was never put into production. Interesting how such a small thing killed over 80,000 people. 6 years after the inception of the project, and after countless hours of experimentation and development of a new mathematics technique and physics, a plutonium core was assembled at Los Alamos and brought to the Trinity test site about 80 miles north of Alamogordo, New Mexico. The site was chosen for its flat ground, isolation, and lack of wind, which could spread nuclear irradiated fallout. On the 16th of July, 1945, the Gadget, the plutonium test device, was detonated on a 100-foot tower with a yield of approximately 19 kilotons. Ranchers from 150 miles away reported seeing the unscheduled sunrise. The success of this test led to the atomic destruction of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Japan, just 3 weeks later. And thus, the United States won the race to the atomic weapon. Historians have speculated that the rush to completion was not so much to beat Germany to the punch, but to show the upstart USSR that the United States had the ultimate weapon. It was Stalin's Russia that put an end to World War II in Europe, but Fat Man and Little Boy took that victory from Russia and handed it to America in the eyes of the public. In Stalin's fury towards the United States, his country began development of even more powerful fusion weapons. A new arms race called the Cold War began. And in spite of all this, people began to wonder, was this a good idea or the starter for war for years to come? And thus, the United States won the race to the atomic weapon. Historians have speculated that the rush to completion was not so much to beat Germany to the punch, but to show the upstart USSR that the United States had the ultimate weapon.